Hello and welcome back to the Story Records. I'm your host Fuzz, and I finally introduced myself, which was something I was supposed to do in the first episode, introducing you guys to the podcast show, which I did not do. Point is, I did it now. And also, it's been 3 million years since the first episode dropped. I didn't really promote it much. I guess I did it on Instagram, and my dear friends helped promote it as well. But personally, I wanted to do extensive promotion after the second episode dropped, because I knew it'll take a while from the first episode before I would post the second one, but I didn't expect it to be this long since the first one. So I'm not exactly proud of it, but here we are today. Funny story before we begin, I actually did record several episodes, like several sessions weeks back. I think there was one last week, which I deleted because I didn't like the runs. I didn't like how the conversation, I guess rather than a conversation, I wasn't liking where technically it is a conversation, it's just one way. I didn't like where the conversation was going, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do a new one, and hopefully I won't do that again, like re-record and just delete everything in the end, because I hated it. It's unhealthy and a huge waste of time. I should stop doing that. So yeah. Okay. Now for this episode, we'll be talking about the second or one of the two short stories on my Ko-fi. Now, It Begins Here is the title of the short story. And if you check out my Ko-fi page or shop, it's bundled together with another story titled The Moment She Realized. Now, keep this between you and me. Actually, those two stories were bundled together so that I could sell them, as in they weren't supposed to be free. And since I can't charge the stories for less than $1, like USD, I had to merge them together so that they could be worth $1. Because individually speaking, they should only cost 2 ringgit. So in USD, that should only be like 40 or 50 cents. But I couldn't do that. They wouldn't let me charge it for mere cents. So I had to combine them to make them $1, which would equal to 4 ringgit something in Malaysian currency, basically. And which is why they were merged. But now they're free because I discovered that I can just add the price tag later despite people already purchasing it. And later on for my presentation, I'll just edit the price tag and make it look like people bought it when they really just downloaded it for free. So if you want to go check that out, go ahead. If you add that story cart, you'll get both documents sent to your email straight away. So there's that. But if you hadn't checked out the other stories, also go do that. But I should probably start talking about It Begins Here first. Okay, so it's been a while since I wrote the story, but I do remember things like what inspired me to write it, the music that I was listening to on repeat while I was writing, and basically a lot of other inspirations that went into the story. Now, a brief summary of that story would be basically just two boys in their last year of high school discussing a bit about what they want to do with their future, more or less, like what university are you applying for, why hadn't you applied for anything, something along the lines like that. I won't spoil too much because, if you hadn't already read it, go check it out for context, but I don't want to fixate too much on that story, like the events that transpire in the story, because I want to talk more about the things that happened behind the scenes, like things you don't see in that story. I guess I have the author's note and whatever at the end of the page. For every short story I read, I always include an author's note, basically just to give comments. I don't remember what I wrote, so I might somehow repeat that here. I try not to, but I probably should have read that author's note first, but whatever. We've recorded, and I've told myself I'm not gonna re-record, so okay. So let's start with what inspired me to write that. Now, truthfully, when I started writing it, I didn't have much in mind. I knew I wanted to write something about basketball, though, because that story has some I wouldn't say references, but I included bits and pieces about how this character is into Blake. The character Blake is really into basketball, and his friend Adwin is really good at it despite not having much interest in it. But yeah, basically all I wanted to do was include basketball somewhere, somehow in one of my short stories. And this story became a victim of that because at the time I was writing it, I just finished Slam Dunk, the anime show, and it was really good. If you're into anime or sports anime or just anime in general, basically, go ahead and check it out if you haven't already. It's really good. And yeah, I basically I was just really inspired by that, and I just wanted to include it somewhere. And also wanted to reference a bit to one of the characters from the show because if you've seen the show and you've read my story, you'll probably notice similarities in one of the characters. And yeah, I won't say who it is, but yeah, one of the characters is a reference to one of the characters from Slam Dunk. Not entirely the same, but both share the similarities of being good at basketball and other things, of course. But yeah, at that time I just wanted to do something that I just needed an excuse to write about basketball. But I didn't really have a premise for that. Like, I didn't want to write a straight up like basketball story. Not that well versed in the games, and I don't really know how I can write that without overly explaining things here and there, because I feel like it's kind of hard to write a story that's just purely sports, like just explaining how a game works. Like I'm gonna have to try do that one day. I mean, it sounds like an interesting and challenging concept, which I'm not really thinking of doing at the moment. But yeah, it's just basically it's kind of too much for me. So I scrapped the whole idea of like writing a story about a basketball game altogether. And so I Googled up like a prompt generator to find a prompt that I could expand on, and it was this website called, I think it was called Scribble or something. I could be wrong. I don't remember what the website was called, but it was basically just a prompt generator, and I optimized a lot of prompts multiple times to find the one that I can write on. And it was this one that said that quoted I think they found a book under his bed, something along the lines. And I thought, yeah, I think I can do something with this. And so I took that prompt and expanded on it. It started with dialogue, and then I moved down, and then I went back up. So initially, in the story, it's placed in the middle, sort of like in the I forgot what's the word, expedition, nearing the climax, basically. It started there, and I realized that there's not really much explanation on why this is happening. So I moved my way up and thought I'm just going to write something to introduce the readers to the characters and get a general idea of their likes and dislikes and who they a snippet of the characters. And then I moved back to where I started, which was where I started with a prompt. And then the challenge was to find a way to conclude the story. Now, spoiler alert, if you don't mind, I'm pretty sure you don't really care, but basically, when I moved my way down, the character Adwin, I wasn't quite sure what to do with him in terms of like his interests. Like, Blake had clear interest in basketball, but Adwin is kind of like that role, I wouldn't say role model, I guess you could say, actually he is a role model. Like, he's a role student. He's the kind of student people look up to. He's like gifted, he's really smart, good in a lot of things, but he himself has no interest in these things that he is good at. To him it's just there. It doesn't really matter if he's good at it, because he either doesn't know he likes them or just straight up doesn't like it at all. So that's the kind of character Adwin is. Like, he doesn't like, I wouldn't say he doesn't like basketball, but more of a sense where he doesn't know if he likes it. Like, there are things that he has interest in, and they don't match up to and basketball doesn't match up to that interest. So said interest at that time when I was writing, I wasn't quite sure what to do. I didn't know what to make him, what thing that I should make him like should it be writing? Like, is he just more passionate into writing, or is he into, I don't know, like, other, I just wanted to find an interest for him that could kind of go against what his friend think he would like. Like, Blake has known Adwin since he was in middle school and so on, and even so, he still has a lot that he doesn't know about Adwin, and he knows that. Like, he acknowledges that he doesn't really know Adwin that well. So I want it to be an interest. I wanted Adwin's interest to be something that would pretty much surprise Blake when he finds out. So I settled with art. I made it so that Adwin, really likes drawing, so that the book that Blake found under his bed had sketches of things that Adwin drew. Now, it wasn't stated in the story, but I intended so that Adwin isn't a good artist. Like, he draws, but he doesn't draw that well. I mean, like, you could say he draws like an amateur, essentially. Like, it's not that good, but it's like, it's a drawing. You can still make his drawing, it's just not as good as, a good artist per se, like not as good as someone who's experienced. But I never stated it because I kind of just want to leave it to your imaginations to think like, oh yeah, maybe he's a good artist. Like, you can picture the kind of images he would draw. But personally, I envisioned it so that he wasn't that good of an artist. But it's really up to your interpretation. Like, if you want to say, oh, like, since Adwin is so good in a lot of things, like he's a gifted human being, then he would clearly be good in drawing as well. Well, that's also up to you. But me personally, I like to think that the one thing that he isn't good at is also the one thing that he truly enjoys doing. I don't know, I'm not a gifted person, but it could also be the way that, because everything always goes his way, it probably bores him, it doesn't really interest him as much. So having him be bad in something would make it so like it motivates him to do better so that he can perfect it. But still, it's really up to your interpretation. If you want to say he's naturally good at it, then so be it. It could also work that way. But yeah, I guess that would be all for Adwin. I'm not sure what I can say about Blake. I mean, when I was writing, I had a lot of ideas for Blake, but now that I'm recording, I'm not really quite sure what it is about his character. I guess I could say that he's mostly inspired by how my friends inspire me. Like, he's the kind of friend who would unknowingly, like, he himself doesn't realize that he is providing support and just motivation to his friends. He's that kind of person, because to Adwin, Blake is his source of motivation. If it wasn't for Blake's motivation to join a basketball team once he enters college, then Adwin probably wouldn't have considered applying for art university or something like along the lines, because like to him, seeing how Blake in school clearly likes basketball but refuses to join the basketball team, to Adwin it's like saying, oh, like, we don't have to pursue what we like, because if that's not what's intended for us, then we don't have to pursue it. I mean, it's really up to the individual. If you should pursue your passion, good for you. Some people think otherwise. Some people like to think more objectively, like, if it doesn't benefit me, or if it has more like negatives to positives, then I might as well stick with something that can guarantee that I have a good future. Whether, like, despite me liking it or not, that's another story. Basically playing it safe, like quote unquote safe. But yeah, it really depends on the person. This is getting meta, but to Adwin, that's how he sees the situation with how Blake refuses to join the basketball team despite playing one-on-one street ball with Adwin every time they have the free time to do so. And so because of that, Adwin never really, I mean, he considered joining art school, but it was a decision that he hesitated on, and see how Blake was suddenly motivated to attempt to join the basketball team in college, it really inspired Adwin to pursue his dreams. But then again, if you look at from the other way, if it wasn't for Blake discovering Adwin's journal under his bed, he wouldn't have known about Adwin's interest in art. And if it wasn't for that, he probably wouldn't have had the final kind of like deciding matter. Like, what's the word? I guess you could say it's kind of like a catalyst, or like the final man, I forgot the word for it, but it's something like a catalyst. Like, if it wasn't for that, then Blake wouldn't have decided to try out for a college basketball team in the first place. So yeah, I guess it works both ways. Like, if it wasn't for Adwin, Blake wouldn't have been motivated, and vice versa. If it wasn't for Blake, Adwin wouldn't have thought of pursuing his dreams. But they're just there to support each other, and it's really nice. And yeah, as I've mentioned, Blake, he was inspired by one of my friends. Well, a lot of my friends actually, who, sometimes I'm just minding my own business, not doing work, watching videos, watching movies, watching dramas or something. And then suddenly a friend would hit me up and ask me something about work, which I hadn't finished or hadn't done. And like, if it wasn't for them messaging me, I probably wouldn't have started. And it's like a very small gesture, and they never intended to do, like, my friends never intended to motivate me to do it anyway. This is them being curious and them wanting to finish their work. So like, it's unintentional and it's very minuscule. It's not like a huge thing, but that little thing always manages to like motivate me to like, since they ask, I feel like I should probably finish it now. I don't know, like, it's either the need to catch up to the friend, or probably feeling ashamed how I'm answering their questions while my work is just like left in the ditches. I don't know, but basically the littlest things always helps me get through pretty much all of the semesters so far up till now, and I really appreciate it. Now this is getting personal, but yeah, I really do appreciate these little boosts of motivations that my friends give me. So thank you guys, I love you. Well, since we're only like 3 minutes away from 20 minutes of recording time, I feel like this is a perfect stopping point for the second episode. As I've mentioned earlier, if you hadn't already and you're interested to check out the short story of this episode, it begins here. You can go ahead and check it out on my Ko-fi shop. Again, it's merged with another story. It's not merged into files. Like, if you download the two stories, they'll be in separate files, but they're under the same post. So yeah, I'll talk about the other short story that's in the post in the third episode. I won't make any promises and say that episode's gonna come next week or whatever. But yeah, it's gonna come out sometime, and hopefully it'll come out sooner than it took the second episode to come out, since the first episode dropped. So hopefully that'll not happen again. I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a nice day. Oh wait, actually, I discovered that Spotify doesn't mind if you include copyrighted music into podcast episodes. I can't say the same for other streaming platforms. It's especially not allowed on YouTube, or you'll get copyright striked or whatever. But Spotify is fine with it. So I thought, starting from now, whenever I write a story and have a song that I listen to on repeat as I'm writing, I will include that as the outro. So for this story in particular, I was listening to Big Bang's Sober on repeat. I'm not really sure why that song specifically, because lyric-wise, it didn't really have much to do with the story. But with that being said, I'll end this for real now. So till we meet again in the next episode. Bye.